What does a locker room mantra, a bruising blowout, and a playoff berth have in common? For the Indiana Fever, everything. Their 94-65 win over the Washington Mystics wasn't just a victory, it was survival and defiance rolled into one. And in the middle of it all, Aliyah Boston dropped a line that has teammates buzzing and fans demanding to know more. What exactly did she say? And why is it the mindset carrying Indiana into the playoffs without their superstar Caitlin Clark and 4 other injured players? Stick around, because this is more than just basketball. How can a playoff team lose half its rotation and still find a way to survive? That's the story of the Indiana Fever this season. The roster didn't just take a hit, it was gutted. Caitlin Clark, the sophomore sensation who was supposed to lead this team into a new era, was lost after only 13 games with a torn groin. Sophie Cunningham, gone with a knee injury. Chloe Bibby, done with a knee injury. Sydney Colson, sidelined. Ari McDonald, finished with a foot injury. 5 names, 5 contributors cut from the picture. When that many core players disappear, most teams crash. For Indiana, this became their test. Probably no thinking way. I don't think, thinking back to the beginning of the season, that anyone would have ever foreseen it going like this. Clark's injury carried the heaviest blow. She was averaging over 16 points and setting the kind of playmaking standard that had Fever fans believing the postseason wasn't just possible, it was expected. When the announcement came down that she was out for the season, you could feel the shock ripple not just through Indiana, but across the basketball world. Fans who had been packing Gainbridge Fieldhouse were left asking how this team could possibly keep pace without their biggest star. Analysts lined up to say the Fever's playoff dreams were over. And it wasn't only Clark. The constant rotation of hardship signings made Indiana look less like a stable roster and more like a moving train people were trying to jump onto. 18 different players have suited up at some point. Imagine taking a team photo at the start of the year, then halfway through realizing almost every face in that picture has been replaced. Odyssey Sims flying in, Shea Petty stepping into minutes, Aerial Powers carving out a role. It wasn't strategy as much as survival, and survival doesn't usually end in a playoff push. For whatever reason, things happen and you've got to continue to put your best foot forward. You've got to continue to stay the course. This group has been forced to grow strong roots, and teams can go one of two ways when those things happen. You either use it to pull you together and as motivation to continue to get better and do it for one another and do it for your teammates that have been lost to injury, or it pulls some teams apart. That's where Stephanie White's leadership made the difference. Even with her roster wiped out, she didn't push panic buttons. She simplified the system, streamlined rotations, and got players to focus on the foundation. White even admitted the staff had to think outside the box to maximize what they had. She knew glossing over the adversity would be a mistake. Instead, she leaned into it, reminding her group how tough they were, physically and mentally, and the players followed. When I look at this group, I'm just so incredibly thankful for the type of people that we have in this locker room, for the way that they have been able to continue to stay the course and bounce back and stay together, to pull for one another, to really be flexible enough to make space for different types of teams that we've had throughout the course of the year, and to continue to put ourselves in position. By August, doubts gave way to something else. Resilience. What was supposed to be the downfall of this team became its hidden weapon. No superstar to lean on, no problem. Every woman on the roster learned to shoulder the weight. That next woman up mantra that started as a necessity turned into their identity. And once they carried it into Washington, the toughness that had been forced on them all season finally exploded into dominance. How do you turn heartbreak into a 29-point demolition? The Indiana Fever found that answer on the road against the Washington Mystics, and it came in the form of a win so commanding it felt less like a basketball game and more like a message to the entire league. This wasn't just any win, it was the one that clinched a return to the playoffs and proved that even without Caitlin Clark, this team has more than one engine powering it forward. The game didn't look like a blowout in the opening half. Washington came out strong, forcing Indiana into tough looks and trading buckets to keep things tight. The Fever's offense wasn't clicking early, and if you had been watching, You could feel a bit of that nervous tension in the air. The Mystics had momentum, and with Clark, Cunningham, McDonald, Bibby, and Colson all sidelined, the question was real. Could Indiana hold its ground, or would this be the kind of night that slips away? By halftime it was competitive, but the tone completely flipped when the third quarter rolled around. The Fever locked down defensively in a way that didn't just slow Washington, it smothered them. The Mystics managed only 9 points in that entire frame. 9. That's not just a cold streak, that's near total shutdown basketball. Every passing lane felt disrupted, every matchup contested, and suddenly Indiana looked like the hungrier team on both ends. From there, the lead ballooned, climbing past 20, past 25, and eventually stretching to a 33-point gap at its peak. The numbers told a story, but the individual plays told the rest. Natasha Howard stepped up exactly when Indiana needed her most, pouring in a game-high 17 points and punishing Washington every chance she got near the rim. Aliyah Boston brought her steady dominance again, finishing with another double-double, 12 points and 11 rebounds, giving Indiana control of the paint on both ends. And just when it seemed like the Fever would need more scoring to put the game away, Ariel Powers surged off the bench with 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists, looking like the spark plug that refused to let the energy dip. The contributions didn't stop there. Lexi Hull was all over the floor, diving for loose balls, hassling ball handlers, turning defense into transition chances. Shea Petty gave them flawless shooting, going 3 for 3 from deep and ending with 13 points. Every role player who checked into the game walked out having left their mark. Even in an off-shooting night, Kelsey Mitchell still found ways to chip in 10 points and steady the backcourt. When you looked at the box score afterward, 5 different Fever players had hit double figures. That balance isn't common in the WNBA, but it was exactly what the circumstances demanded. Statistically, the turnover battle sealed Washington's fate. The Mystics coughed the ball up 22 times, and Indiana turned those into 27 points. The Fever only gave it away 6 times all night, which meant Washington never had a chance to swing momentum back. It wasn't just that Indiana outscored them, it was the way they drained every ounce of hope from the Mystics by capitalizing on nearly every mistake. So who does this team turn to now that their star is watching in street clothes? That answer is starting to take shape, and it's not just one name, though one player has risen to embody the new heartbeat of this team. Aliyah Boston has been front and center, and what she said after the win showed why she might be the anchor this group needs more than ever. What was the one locker room mantra that had teammates buzzing and fans clapping? You only needed to listen to Aliyah Boston after that playoff clinching win in Washington. She didn't just play big, she spoke big, and her words hit just as hard as her rebounds. I think, just being someone in this locker room, you never doubt yourself and what you're capable of no matter what happens. I think the entire staff, up to the head, just made great decisions when people went down on who to bring in, the type of people to bring in, and that was really our mindset. We never doubted ourselves, we never doubted that we could be in the playoffs, even if things looked like it got harder for us as us sticking together, and I think through everything you're able to see that, us play with joy, us play together regardless of who's on that floor. Boston has always been known for her polish and poise, but what she's doing this season is something else entirely. Against the Mystics, she posted yet another double-double, her 17th of the year, which broke the franchise record. To put that in perspective, she's now stacked 41 career double-doubles in just 2 seasons. That consistency is impressive on its own, but in a year where the roster looked like a shuffleboard of injuries, her production became the lifeline. She finished the game with 12 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists, leading the team in plus-minus at plus 29. On the surface, those are numbers. But on the court, it meant the Fever played their best basketball whenever she was in the game. Without Clark, this wasn't just about replacing scoring. Anyone can look for extra points. Boston had to become the team's backbone, the steady pulse that kept the heartbeat alive. She chased down missed shots, anchored the paint against Washington's drives, and moved the ball with quick, decisive passes that got her teammates easy looks. She wasn't only the center in position, she became the center of the Fever's identity. Picture the atmosphere in the locker room after that blowout. Everyone's dripping sweat, still coming off the high of a playoff-clinching win. Teammates huddled, laughing, relieved, but also emotional because of how hard the road had been. Caitlin Clark is watching from the sidelines. Sophie, Eri, Chloe, and Sydney are all stuck in recovery, But here's Boston, gathering the team with words as strong as her stat line. She told her teammates, "Never doubt yourself and what you're capable of." That wasn't just talk. You could see how they played like they believed it. Lexi Hull diving on the floor for possessions, Shea Petty lighting up from deep, Powers coming off the bench like instant firepower. That mantra became the invisible hand pushing them forward. Fans felt it too, echoing her words across social media afterwards. Suddenly, it wasn't just Boston's reminder, it was a rallying cry. Don't doubt what this team can do, even when the odds scream otherwise. Her influence goes further than the box score and one speech though. A younger team might lose focus after celebrating something as huge as their first playoff appearance since 2016. But when Boston was asked about the mood in the locker room afterward, she said with a laugh, "Well, we did make a TikTok," before quickly shifting back into leader mode. She explained everyone was super excited, but reminded the group that the job wasn't finished, stressing that the next game and the playoffs still required preparation. That combination of joy and business is rare. It showed how she can balance the fun of the moment with the seriousness of the grind. Aliyah Boston is proving she's more than a rising star. She's the voice, the anchor, the steadying presence. If Caitlin Clark is the spark that turns heads, Boston is the foundation that holds the house together. And as the Fever march into the postseason, that toughness, that belief she instills, isn't just for this week. It's shaping a culture that could last for years to come. Here's the question no one's asking. What if Indiana's season of injuries was actually the best thing that could have happened to them? From the outside looking in, it felt like a disaster. 5 players lost to season-ending injuries, their superstar sidelined, and a roster that looked different nearly every week. Yet here they are, 7th seed locked in, celebrating their first back-to-back playoff appearances since 2015 and 2016, and still with a chance to climb up to 6th, depending on how results shake out. The reality isn't easy. The Fever's likely round 1 matchups are brutal: Atlanta, Las Vegas, or Phoenix. All 3 are dangerous, and the best-of-3 format means 2 of those games are on the road. Heading into playoff basketball without their top scorer would normally feel like a death sentence, but the truth is the Fever have already shown they can compete with each of those teams. They've not only taken games off them in the regular season, but done it with that same short-handed rotation we see now. For fans in Indiana, the part that hits different is what's coming back to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The Fever are guaranteed at least 1 home playoff game, the first since 2016. That's nearly a decade since postseason basketball was in Indianapolis, and it's happening because this roster learned how to win collectively. They just showed against Washington that 5 different players can get into double figures on any given night. That offensive balance makes them unpredictable, harder to scout, and less reliant on one face to carry the burden. I feel proud. I feel proud of these women. And what they've been able to continue to do. I feel proud that we continue to raise the standard, for ourselves and for one another. But I'm also, I look at this group and the roots that have been grown throughout the course of this season, and thinking about, not just where we are now and the opportunity that we have in the playoffs, but where we're going to be in the future. Across this season, 18 different players suited up in a Fever jersey. That revolving door ended up forging a roster that can plug anyone into big minutes without missing a beat. Lexi Hull and Shea Petty stepped into roles nobody expected. Natasha Howard and Ariel Powers provided veteran stability. Kelsey Mitchell and Aliyah Boston now own playoff experience as top options, not supporting pieces. In a way, Caitlin Clark's absence opened the door for her teammates to grow into bigger roles, and when she does return in 2026, she's walking into a locker room that will already have championship DNA. The story flipped. The injuries everybody thought would derail Indiana instead built a playoff-ready group that looks more dangerous now than it did fully healthy. This season tested the Fever in ways no one expected. Injuries stripped them down, but what was left wasn't weakness. It was grit, depth, and belief. For the first time since 2015, Indiana has a winning record and a playoff berth, proof that the identity forged under pressure is real. Fans should see this as the start of a new chapter, not just survival. The postseason is here, the momentum is real, and the foundation is stronger than ever. And it begs one big question. If this is what they can do with half a roster, what happens when they're whole again?